Put down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news, tips, and your photography questions in real time, with answers from your host, Olympus Visionary Joe Edelman.
Hey, that's me. Thanks for joining me for another live episode of TogChat. I'm your host, Joe Edelman, and my mission, as always, is to help photographers like you to develop a solid understanding of the hows and whys behind great photographs. Before we get going, gang, I need all of you, please take a moment, tell your photography friends that we're streaming live on YouTube right now. Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest way to get the word out. You can click the share button underneath the video, or you can share the link, tog.chat/live. I'm going to put it right here in the chat window for you so that you have it. Please spread the word. And as always, we've got a lot of photographers tuning in from all over the world, which is really cool, by the way. So please check in, leave a comment, let me know that you're here and where you're watching from. Already, I've seen Darian, who is still hanging in Florida in this storm. And we got Andrew and Gordon and Steve and Sven is here and Robert and Carl and Doyle. I really appreciate you guys spending another Wednesday evening with me to talk about photography. So also be sure to start posting your questions for tonight's discussion. I've got a few good ones lined up, but we could use a lot more because as always, I'll do my best to answer them all during our 90-minute, 1-hour show. And if you've been here before, that made complete sense. So let's get started. I'm going to mix things up a little bit tonight. And over the next few weeks, you're going to see the show take on a slightly different format that I think you'll enjoy because it will have a little for people who enjoy the shorter tutorials, as well as some interviews, and of course, the Q&A that we all enjoy and have a lot of fun with. Now, just in case you worry, because I've gotten a few questions recently, some of you weren't here last week, worried that I'm not going to be doing tutorials anymore. No fear. The tutorials are and will be my primary focus, period. Bottom line, I took a couple of months off to catch up on some projects that I've been working on and to get up and running with Olympus, get my speaking schedule going. I've been shooting video all week this week. I'll be back to posting tutorials next week. So they're coming. They haven't gone anywhere. Don't worry. So if you saw the thumbnail for tonight's show, the topic is, when should you really buy that new camera, right? Now, I realize, you guys are all expecting me to give you that usual gear lecture, that is like, hey, you don't need it, yada, yada, yada. But I want to try and take a little bit more of a practical approach because in all fairness, if we can all kind of hit pause on the gear wars for a minute, deep breath, right? So here's the thing. About a year ago, I used a phrase for the first time. To the best of my knowledge, I'm the first person that's ever used this phrase. And that phrase is geartographer. Now, I will admit, and I will own it, I'm not proud of this, but at the time that I used it, I actually meant it as a little bit of an insult. The idea being that, hey, if you're a geartographer, you're really not concentrating on photography and taking good pictures, and you've got your priorities all wrong. The more that I used the phrase and the more I got some feedback from people and talked to some people who admitted that they were geartographers, I realized that that label's not really fair. And here's why. Boys love their toys. There is a large portion of the photography community that gets most of its pleasure from the gear. And that's okay. I mean, a great example, we talk about Mr. Ken Wheeler a lot. Now, don't get me wrong, Ken takes pictures, but he takes pictures that he enjoys. A lot of people don't feel he's the greatest photographer. You know what? Ken's an awesome photographer because he does what he likes, and he's happy with it, and that's it. But it is fair to say Ken takes his pleasure from his gear, and man, does he know his gear. Whether you like him or not, the guy knows it, right? So I realized that I had to be really careful about how I use that word. So I want to make sure that for the sake of this conversation, geartographer is not an insult. Geartographer, it's a category. It's a category of people that are into the gear. And for the geartographers in the world, when Sony comes out with that new camera, or Panasonic full frame hits, or the Nikon and the Canon mirrorless and whatever is available, they're going to want to buy it, and they're going to buy it. Just like the Apple fanboys buy the new phones the minute they come out. And that's okay. what I want to talk to you about, though, is the idea of if we're not just interested in the coolest, newest gear, the toy to play with, how do we figure out when we should be upgrading our gear? So first and foremost, you got to be honest with yourself, right? We all get a little bit of gas, gear acquisition syndrome. If you guys have been following since I switched over to Olympus and I changed my gear system up, I've admitted to some gas purchases along the way because it was a new system, new toys. And I kind of had all that stuff, so it was no big deal, right? So we all get that. But the challenge is being able to separate the gas from the need. So there's nothing wrong with having some gas from time to time and buying a cool toy to have fun with, to play with, right? Why not? But let's talk about the idea that is it going to make you a better photographer? So when I posted my social media notices for tonight's TogChat with the title screen that said, when should you really buy that new camera? I'm going to give you an example, and I'm not going to call anybody out by name, but I had a member of my TogChat Facebook group talk about the fact that they recently got that new Sony because it improves their wedding photography because of the autofocus and its eye tracking capability, or not its eye tracking capability, its speed in autofocus, over 12 frames, I believe it was. And that's just wrong. That feature in the camera does not improve your photography. That feature in the camera is meant as a convenience, kind of like you guys hear me talk about high-speed sync, right? It's not that high-speed sync is bad. It's that high-speed sync is a convenience feature. If you really want to do great photography, you are not going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars for a convenience feature in a camera that you think is going to improve your work. All that feature is doing for this photographer that talked about it improving his wedding photography, it is increasing, statistically, it is increasing the potential that he may get a better shot. So yes, statistically it is increasing that potential, but it is not guaranteeing. Aubrey, thank you so much. I really appreciate the super chat. It is not guaranteeing him better shots. So here's the advice that I have, and this is not going to be a long lecture. This is actually pretty short, sweet, and simple, but I've not talked about this before. I believe that there is a really good argument with many camera brands today and many photographers to not buy the newest when you're ready to upgrade. And we're going to talk about when are you ready. But to not buy the newest, but to buy the one below the newest. So here's my point. First of all, how do you know when it's time to upgrade? If it's not a gas purchase, it's real simple. Is the camera that you have preventing you from producing quality images that you feel you are capable of doing? Now, that requires being honest with yourself, right? Because the camera is not going to give you the quality. Listen to the statement that I just made. If you have to rewind the video, rewind the video. Is the camera preventing you from creating the quality images that you want? The photographer, in fact, I just saw somebody type this a few minutes ago. Gordon Smith, oh, he's talking about driverless cars, okay? But driverless cars do not make you a better driver. So therefore, that's right, okay? A better camera does not make you a better photographer. It simply doesn't. However, a camera will provide you features that can give your work a boost, provided that you are doing good photography and you are taking the time to learn. So, this is where I depart from many of my YouTube colleagues that do video after video about what's the best lens for portraits. I mean, how many videos can you do about which is the best portrait lens? And the lenses are like 6 times bigger than the photographer's hands. Like, really? Who needs that? Ugh. The point is, it's not the gear that's going to get you there. It's when you are hitting a wall and you are trying to accomplish something with your camera and you know that you are following the proper techniques to get it done, but your camera is not capable of doing it. That's when you upgrade. And then you have to look at it, when the Nikon D850 came out. Remember, I was a Nikon D810 user at the time. And I had a lot of people asking, well, I've got like a Nikon D3200 or a D7100. I'm thinking I'm going to upgrade. Should I get the D850? Like, why would you need to go from an APS-C camera like a 3200 or 7100 all the way to the D850? What could possibly be the need there? The reality of it is that DA50 is probably going to overwhelm somebody in that situation. So as I talk about a lot, and I realize folks in different parts of the world, unfortunately, it's a challenge to do this, but whenever possible, rent a camera, try a camera out. And by the way, my bad, I talk a lot about renting cameras from companies like renslentals.com or borrowlenses.com here in the US. It's been pointed out to me recently, much to my chagrin, because I should have been telling you this, most local camera stores, at least here in the US, and I know quite a few in Europe, rent gear. So you don't necessarily even have to do it online. And even if you can't rent it, at a minimum, walk into a camera store. If you even got to drive out of your way a little bit, walk into a camera store, take a disc with you, put it in the camera. They'll let you try the camera out in the store. They're not going to let you wander around the town with it for a day if they don't do rentals, but try it out. Create some images and go back. So that way, if you're a pixel peeper, you can pixel peep. If you're worried about the way it reproduces color, I've seen Sony getting a lot of bad press lately for the way it handles color. So, okay, if you don't like that, check it out, and that way you know firsthand. You're not relying on some article that was written in a blog on the internet or something that you saw in a YouTube video. Try the cameras out. But then what you have to do is be honest with yourself in the sense that, do I need to go for that biggest camera? And the logic that I hear people use frequently is, well, I'll make that jump from a D7100 all the way up to a D850. So that way, I'll be right on the curve right now. And as the curve keeps going, I'll fall behind a little bit, but I'll have a really great camera. Well, that's not horrible logic if you think about it, right? Kind of makes sense, but I would argue that it's flawed logic because we'll stick with Nikon for a minute, right? If you were to go out and buy a D800 or a D810 or even a D750 right now, coming from a 7100, you're making a massive step in terms of camera capabilities and quality. And then you're saving a ton of money, a ton, which you can invest into lenses and other accessories. So, we had some really good answers in the Facebook group. Some people came back and they said, well, the right time to buy a new camera is when your wife says so. There were a lot of really kind of, humorous answers along the way. But the point is, please, gang, if you are not that geartographer, if you are not that photographer that really likes the toys, and that is where your joy comes from. And if you are, more power to you. Enjoy it. And if you got the money, you deserve to enjoy it, right? But if you're not, be realistic. Buying that latest camera, buying that biggest camera that's out there is not going to help your photography. The camera that's going to help your photography is the one that is going to provide you with capabilities that you don't currently have. And please don't kid yourself. Like the photographer in my Facebook group that made the comment about needing that autofocus at 12 frames per second with tracking to be able to get better wedding pictures. I'm sorry, but the simple math is that's a photographer that is not taking the time to actually work on their skills as a photographer. That's a photographer that is hoping that the gear is going to do the job for them. And I hate to tell you, gang, it doesn't work that way. You guys have heard me take exception with photographers who have talked about the idea that you need 15 stops of dynamic range in order to be able to take good pictures. Really? Since when? I mean, think about that. How in the world did we ever create photographs before dynamic range? How did we ever create photographs without 12 frames per second subject tracking on autofocus? And how did we ever get pictures? Was it just luck? No, it was skill. It was a matter of having to shoot, having to practice, having to learn. So again, everybody's got their motivation for becoming a photographer and for enjoying photography, right? But at the end of the day, if you want to be great at what you do, you are not going to do it by purchasing a piece of gear. You are going to do it by practicing, by shooting, by learning, by developing an understanding. So my point to you is, don't think that when you are ready to upgrade, you need to necessarily go to the newest, and greatest that your brand has to offer. Take a look at one or two models below what your brand is offering as the top of the line. And you're going to find that in many cases, that camera is going to meet your needs. It's going to give you the ability to bypass where you're at in terms of the limitations that you have, but it's going to do it at a lesser cost, which is going to allow you more disposable income to add accessories, lighting equipment, whatever it is you need, instead of dropping every penny that you have in that new $3,000 or $4,000 camera body. So, things to be considered. Okay? So, let's move on. I've got a lot of really, really good questions lined up tonight, and I wanted to show you guys some little demos along the way here. Okay? So, I see some questions coming in. People talking about, Aubrey, what's this? You needed a backup body and decided to go with mirrorless because of the weight and went with the EM1 Mark II. So far, it's awesome. It's on sale. Bonus, yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, the mirrorless in general, certainly smaller, lighter. Okay. I'm a little surprised at the overall size of the Nikon and Canon mirrorless cameras, but you know, they're pretty much kind of in line with what Sony's doing too. But I think over time we'll see those get, you know, smaller, lighter as well. So absolutely. I mean, if that's working for you, Aubrey, that's great. I certainly love those cameras. I think they're awesome. In fact, those of you that follow me on Instagram, which by the way, if you're not following me on Instagram, hey, why not? Come on, please follow me on Instagram at instagram.com/Joe Edelman. Last Friday, you saw my Instagram story, which hopefully you saw my Instagram story. I was up in Dumbo, New York. So for those of you that don't know, it's a section of Brooklyn. It's right across the river from Lower Manhattan, and it's sandwiched in between the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge. And there's a very, very iconic image. And sadly, I apologize, I don't know who took that image. It's very old, very iconic black and white image, where you're looking down the street between two warehouses and the Manhattan Bridge is there, and framed in the bottom arch of the Manhattan Bridge is the Empire State Building. And pretty much any day of the week, 7 days a week, if you go to that street and that intersection in Dumbo, Brooklyn, there's like 100 people in the street. It's impossible to take that picture at this point. It is like Instagram heaven. So Olympus is putting together an Instagram campaign. Actually, it's been going on for a little while. It's for their little camera called the EPL9, which, here, I should actually put it together the way that you would get it out of the box. Let's start there, okay? So if you were to buy this camera out of the box, that's what the EPL9 looks like. Now, a lot of you are thinking, oh, it's, you know, it's like a little toy carry-around camera, right? I'll be honest, that's what I thought when I first saw it. Ooh, how wrong, right? So the camera comes in a bunch of different colors. It's got a 14 to 42 kit lens that it comes with, but here's the cool piece. And so this was my challenge last Friday, and I gotta tell you, it was a ton of fun. This camera actually has an insane amount of features. Everything from manual on up to the live composite features that the bigger cameras have. It does panorama shots, all kind of cool stuff. So what I did last Friday, I was up in Dumbo for Olympus with two Instagrammers, and I got to try out the Olympus 12-100. So a lot of you keep asking me about this 12-100 lens. And man, was this fun. So this was my kit for the day, which is great. You notice the lens is bigger than the camera body, right? Which is pretty cool. Have I played with the Olympus art filters yet? I have toyed with them briefly. So I will tell you that in general, I'm not a big fan of, you know, preset type stuff. You guys heard me talk about that before. However, the black and white art filters, ooh, to die for. I love them. Honestly, for me, it's just a matter of I've got to get a little bit more free time so that I can go out and play with those filters a little bit more to see what the potential is with them. So while I'm not a fan of them, it's a very generalized statement because I haven't used most of them. But those black and white ones, love them. Really, really awesome. Okay. Now, for these Instagrammers that we were working with, the art filters are like amazing. So, you know, literally shooting all day, all natural light, took no lighting, no reflectors, no nothing. I took a reflector, never unpacked it. So working in bright sunlight, everything from bright sunlight to shade to backlit situations. So you're gonna see a video next week with what I did for the day with this camera, really just to prove a point. In fact, you ready for this? I shot 2,000 frames that day, last Friday, JPEG. Everything JPEG. With this little camera, I'll show you the results. I'll show you what came out of the camera, how it's being used, and the whole bit. ton of fun. Now, obviously, for those of you that are working with, like the EM1 Mark II, or for those of you that are Canon Nikon people, I'm not saying you should go buy one of these. I will tell you guys, for you Olympus shooters especially, if you're a diehard Olympus shooter and you want to get your wife or your significant other kind of a little bit involved in your hobby, this camera rocks because it uses all your lenses. So you could get this as a gift for your wife or your significant other. They then have the ability to use the kit lens and or trade off lenses with you. Plus, for those of you that have to get your wife on board with your purchases, well, hey, there's a way to get your wife into the hobby as well, okay? So it's a great little camera. And Olympus is marketing the camera, of course, to all photographers, but they're definitely right now putting on a big push with young female Instagrammers. And so that's what we were working with. Chaz Madge, no eye viewfinder makes you hold your camera badly. So actually, Chaz, there's a little bit of science there. So the science is, it is definitely better to have a camera with a viewfinder than to hold a camera out here. I absolutely agree with you. That's what the science says. Now remember, I am not saying to anybody, take this camera and make it your primary camera. If you're following me and you're serious about doing portraits and people shots, no. The video that I'm doing is not about the camera. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the camera again because that's what I used, all right? I'm going to use the video. The point behind the video is to show you guys what you can do with a very simple camera with basic settings. I ran auto ISO in a day. I controlled my shutter speed and my aperture. I ran auto ISO with a 12-to-100 zoom lens, and I shot in JPEG. And the stuff turned out great. But that's because I also paid attention. I paid attention to getting my exposure correct. I paid attention to what was going on in my composition with my lighting, with my backlighting, etc. But what I did learn, Chaz, is that the great part of it is the comfortable distance for me. I'm going to back up a little bit so you can see. The comfortable distance for me holding this camera was right about here, which still allows me to do the tripod thing with my body, still allows me to balance it. You see, I've got the camera in my left hand and I'm doing my shooting. So yeah, I'll be the first to admit, if this was like an everyday camera for me, I want a viewfinder. I still want that, and the science actually, supports that. David, yes, or your husband. That's why I said significant other. Okay, I was very, very pleasantly surprised, Chaz, at actually how easy it is to support this and do it in a traditional way. So here's a little test for some of you. Since Chaz brought this up, let's try and see, you'll have to be honest in your responses here, but let me switch this lens over a second. I am willing to bet that there is a reasonably large percentage of viewers that do not hold their cameras properly. Now, let me explain something. So here's the challenge before you all start thinking, what does he know? I don't have to hold it the way that he does. This is not a lesson about what Joe does. This is a lesson about what's in that camera manual. You know that big booklet that came with your camera that you were supposed to read when you bought the camera? And it's usually in the very first chapter. That chapter that nobody ever reads because that's the welcome to your new camera part, right? There is a right way and a wrong way to hold a camera. And every camera that is on the market today, from Fuji to Pentax to Nikon to Canon to Sony to Olympus to Panasonic, they all give the same description in the instruction manual as to how to hold the camera. And they are all designed similarly for this very purpose. So let's review what that is. First of all, and keep in mind before I tell you this, I'm a lefty, right? I would prefer to be able to do things with my left hand to control the camera, but I can't. Because all cameras, DSLRs and mirrorless, are designed to be held in the left hand, period. If there's no battery grip on the bottom, your hand is going to be flat against the bottom of the camera and the lens, but the idea is you are taking the palm of your hand, like so, putting the camera through the palm of your hand. That is step one. The reason for that is, when you bring the camera up to your eye, you have now created a tripod and a support underneath, okay? You'll notice on all cameras, the majority of the controls are on the right-hand side. Why is that? So that you can put your finger on the shutter release and control the cameras. Or go vertical if you have a grip and control the camera. Those of you that do this are risking blurry images, even with 5-axis image stabilization. 5-axis image stabilization was not designed to allow you to be sloppy. 5-axis image stabilization was designed for you to be able to push limits, push boundaries, accomplish things that you couldn't accomplish before. That image stabilization, or in the case of like Nikon or those others, vibration reduction, that is not there so that you can be sloppy with your technique. That is there so that you can push your technique. So this kind of, all this crap. No, that's not how it's done. It's just not. Left hand, up against the body, right there. That's it. If you don't believe me, read your instruction manual. It's in your instruction manual, okay? Now, I just saw something here. Let's see. Somebody, and I wanted to go back and talk about this here. With no eye viewfinder, holding it at stomach and hip level with the screen flipped out works well. It works well in a pinch, but it is not an ideal scenario. Okay, that's the thing you have to understand here. Adam Batchelor, discrimination against lefties at its peak in the camera industry. Never seen a left-handed camera. No, I've never seen a left-handed camera either. And Cooley, you're right, it drives me nuts too when people don't hold the camera right, because that's honestly, that's like step one, piece one of how are you ensuring that you're getting great shots every time. It's about building habits, okay? It's simply about building habits, right? And I will say, for those of you that are coming to Photo Plus at the end of October, by the way, and literally, if you're coming to New York, you better come say hi to me. I will pretty much be living in the Olympus booth for 3 straight days, all right? I'll be talking 3 times, or once each day, sorry. So 3 times I'll be doing a presentation on stage. Friday morning, I'm doing a photo walk called Street Fashion Photography. And at the top of every hour, all 3 days, I will be in the Olympus Portrait Experience doing little demos. So please come and say hi. But I guarantee you, as you wander the hall and watch different photographers who are presenting on stage for camera companies, you will see some fairly big name photographers with really bad habits in terms of how they hold their cameras. So at the end of the day, we could push back against my argument and say, well, look, their work is better than yours, Joe, and they don't hold the camera right. And you know what? You're right. In many cases, we're talking photographers whose work is much better than mine. But the fact that they don't hold the camera right doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it proper. It just means they've learned to work around that, but they're taking a risk every time they do it. So, all right. So anyway, that being said, let's get to some questions, okay? Sanat had a question here. This is a good one. I wasn't sure if I was even going to tackle this one, but hey, let's go for it. He is from a small country in the EU called Slovenia. I have heard of that. And his question is, how do you manage to balance your personal life versus your professional life? There's a whole bunch of jokes that I could insert here, probably not really good ones. I work really hard at this. A lot of times, I suck at this. So first of all, the most important thing I have to say about how do I balance my work and my professional life is my wife is probably one of the most patient women on the face of this earth, period. The other thing for me, and I've talked about this before, this is not my first marriage. It is my third. It is also my wife's third. It took me 3 times to get it right. Not proud of that, but it did. But the fact of the matter is, the big lesson that I learned coming into this is my wife has her own life, and I have my own life. We have our own interests, and we have our lives together. So the good part of it is compared to when you're younger and you've got to be together every minute, our time together is very important to us, and we make time to be together so that it is very special, but we also don't need to be attached to the hip all the time. So, at the end of the day, though, I've been incredibly fortunate. My wife is super supportive, both of my work. A lot of people frequently ask, well, you photograph pretty women all the time, you do nudes, you do all that stuff, and your wife doesn't mind. No, she's actually very supportive of it. So a big part of that, honestly, is just a matter of, if that's important to you, find a spouse who is, supportive of such things. But the short answer to the question, how do you balance the two? And it sounds ridiculously simple, like almost too simple, but it really is this simple. The hard part is doing it. You just have to make time. You simply have to make time. You have to be willing to walk away from the professional stuff, shut it down, know that it'll be there in the morning when you go back to it, and make time. So for me, actually, a crazy little example, my wife and I have television shows that we like to watch pretty much every night. There's 1 or 2 shows that we'll watch, or we'll record them and we'll watch them. So when I finish TogChat tonight, I'll pack things up, shut everything down, and go watch TV for a couple hours. My wife's a college professor, so she's an early bird. She'll go to sleep early. I'll work for another hour or 2, and then I'll go to sleep and start over and repeat tomorrow. But it's literally a matter of you've just got to make the time. I mean, that's the key. So it is about kind of creating a discipline. Okay. So let's see here. Carl has a good question. This is possibly the best question of the night. This is from Carl S. He's relocating soon to the Albuquerque and Santa Fe area, and it has a very robust film, TV, and art community. He wants to try and get me to come down and do a talk or a workshop. So his question is, should he talk to a local Olympus dealer, or should he talk to Olympus directly? Maybe I know someone specifically. So the best thing to do, Carl, find your local photo retailer in Santa Fe or in the Santa Fe area that sells Olympus. Let them know that you would like to have them bring me to the area to do a talk. And what will happen is they'll reach out to their sales rep from Olympus. Now, it doesn't mean that because you ask, I'm going to show up immediately. But what it does mean is that if that retailer is doing a photography event, like for instance, I'm going to be at Creve Coeur in St. Louis for their Photopalooza next month, the 9th and the 10th of November. So that's a special event where they're going to have, speakers from all different camera brands and all different types of photography there. And Olympus is sending me there to present at that event. So, but it's your photo retailer that actually kind of has the leverage to make it happen, to be able to get a company like Olympus to bring me down. Because obviously, hopefully you can understand, for any company, I don't care if it's Olympus, Nikon, Canon, Sony, if they're going to send a speaker, they want to make sure that it's a situation where the money they're going to spend, that speaker is going to get in front of as many people as possible, and as many potential customers or existing users. So, they are a little bit concerned about the size of the event, but it doesn't have to be like 1,000 people there. The talks that I did in Florida 2 weeks ago, they were relatively small groups, but these were 2 photo retailers that sell a lot of Olympus gear throughout the course of the year. They have a lot of Olympus users. So Olympus, at least, I can't speak for the other brands, but Olympus puts a lot of effort and a lot of money into supporting that. So that would be the best way. The other thing that you can do, Carl, let me switch over real quick here to my website, just so that you can keep track of, where I'm at, where I'm going to be, where I'm teaching, all that kind of stuff. If you go to my website, click on that lectures and workshops tab, the schedule will pop up for everything I have coming up. So next up is subscribe to my email newsletter while you're there. But next up is Photo Plus, the end of this month. It's Friday the 25th, then the 26th and the 27th. And then I will be doing 3 days in Newark, Delaware at the Horizon Photography Summit. Awesome event if you've never been there. A lot of you keep asking me about doing full day workshops. Here's one. In fact, it's the only full day workshop I'm doing all year this year. So it's happening on Friday, November 2nd in Newark, Delaware. It's a fashion and glamour portraiture workshop. We'll have a model, makeup artist. In fact, for those of you that follow my videos routinely, you're familiar with Monet, who frequently appears in my videos, also does makeup for me. She will be at that event with me doing makeup and also doing a little bit of modeling. So, and then November 9th and 10th, I'll be doing the Creve Coeur event, the Photopalooza in St. Louis. December 7th and 8th, I'm going to be doing Precision Camera in Austin, Texas. I saw Robert earlier say that he's going to be there. Very cool. I hope I get to meet more of you guys down in Texas. So this is also the best way to kind of keep track of where I'm going to be, what's going on and what's coming up. But definitely go speak to your local retailer. That is the best way to get the ball rolling, to get them to, bring me down to speak. Okay? All right. Next question that I had on the list here. Martin. So I set this up for you here, Martin, so that I can give you an example. So Martin, he did a test shoot with his wife, and he had her laying on the floor on her back. He put an octabox above her, which, as he says, lights her topside nicely and very evenly. But he's having issues lighting the side of her face nearest the floor. So in other words, like her head's turned, and since the box is above, you're getting shadow on this side of the face, right? This is the side that she's kind of laying on. So he tried a second slave on the floor, but it blows her face out too much. Any ideas? He's Googled, he's YouTube for looking for suggestions. He hasn't had a lot of success. So Martin and the rest of you, you got to use a little bit of your imagination here, but I'll show you. The first thing that I would do, Martin, is I would try to get your wife or your model elevated. Okay, that's going to be the easiest way to do it. So this is the bed box that you guys have seen me talk about in other videos. You've seen me use it before. If you have your subject lay down on something elevated, so this is about 1.5 feet off the ground, right? But what this would give me the ability to do is to put lights on either side and actually get them fairly low. Or bring lights up at about a 35-degree angle with nice, decent size, like a medium-sized softbox, like a 20, or 24-inch, or maybe even a 30-inch softbox. That's going to give me very nice, even light on both sides, so that when she does turn her face to one side or the other, I'm not going to pick up that heavy shadow. So honestly, your best bet is to go ahead and try an elevator. Now, based on your description, where you talk about having a light on the floor, but it's blowing out her face, what that sounds like to me, Martin, is that you've got that light too close. Sounds like a little bit of inverse square law backlash happening, right? Because if you are adjusting the two lights to the proper balance, there's no reason for that light to be blowing anything out. It may not give you the most flattering light, or it may actually give you really, really soft light, depending on what your preference is. But keep in mind, if you're just working with one light, the other option is, if your wife is laying down flat here, so you're telling me you've got the box up here. So if your wife is laying flat, but you want to take the picture standing, so I'm you taking the picture of her here, and she's going to turn her face towards me, why not take that octabox and just move it over to here? And that way it's nice and big, so it's going to give you soft light, but what it will do is throw what little bit of shadow it creates, it's going to throw it behind her on the floor, so you won't see it. So, I mean, really what you're dealing with is you've got, whoops, sorry about that. You got to do a little bit of problem solving is really kind of what it comes down to. But yeah, it's definitely a matter of just try a couple other scenarios. But for me, the easiest option is elevate, okay? Adam's asking, hey, did you ever travel, whoops, where are we at here? Sorry. Did I ever receive my book yet from Olympus of your images? Can we catch a sneak peek? I did, Adam. In fact, I posted a little video clip of it in, I believe it's in the TogChat group on Facebook, I posted it on my Facebook business page. So it's on one of those. So you want to check that out. And also, by the way, too, somebody just pointed this out to me yesterday, so it's kind of cool. I'm finally on the Olympus website. So if you go to the getolympus.com and check out the Visionary page, my page is there. I have my own page with my little profile and what's in my bag and all that kind of stuff. So let me see, Adam, if I can find that video really easy. I'm not going to take a lot of time here, but if I can catch it really quick, I will see if we can let it play here. Unfortunately, Facebook doesn't post the search results in chronological order like these, but there it is. Okay, so you guys won't hear the sound, but this is what the book looked like. So you should be able to see this. This was when I unpacked it. If you come to Photo Plus, you will be able to see this book in person. It's a 12 by 12 album that was printed by Miller's Photo Lab. It's all bound, really stiff pages. They did, I got to tell you, did an amazing job on this book. I would encourage you, literally, I know that a lot of you are kind of Olympus curious. You don't really want to change, and I'm not saying you should change. But if you are following me, you keep hearing all this talk about Olympus and Olympus lenses, and you're curious, come to the Olympus booth and track me down or track down that book, and I will show you those images, because I would love for you to see just how sharp those images are and how sharp the detail is, and the eyelashes and the skin texture and all that. definitely pretty cool. I'm excited about it. So yeah, Adam, that was it. And then I've also got kind of a digital photo album that is kind of a really cool new thing from a company called photoflashdrive.com that I will have with me at Photo Plus. It also has a lot of my images on it. And it's a bound photo album. But when you open it up, it's actually got a pretty high resolution tablet screen in it, and it will play images in a slideshow or play video clips. It's pretty cool. So I'll have that there as well. So you'll get to see quite a few more of my images in that as well, for those of you that are going to make it to Photo Plus. Okay. Duke has a question here. What is a good site to buy good images to use as backgrounds? Because heck, why would we want bad images, right? He has a person that wants a different background and he doesn't want to buy more backgrounds. So, I mean, Duke, literally, you can do a search for, stock photos, and there are tons of places out there. I will tell you one site that I use, and let me bring it up here, and I will show you. I find their prices to be fairly reasonable. They have a half-decent selection of images. Let me just switch my screen. It's a website called dreamstime.com. In fact, if you sign up now, you can get 5 images free in the 1-week trial. So if this is like a one-time thing, Duke, you can do that without, even having to pay. But here, I will put their link in. There are places that you can get stuff cheaper. Obviously, there are places that you can get stuff a whole lot more expensive. It really comes down to what type of imagery are you looking for, and what are you willing to pay, what's your budget, etc. So the Lofty N Scaler. Olympus makes beautiful cameras and lenses. You just don't care for the video capabilities of the gear. Yeah, the Lofty N Scaler. I hear that a lot. I will be honest with you. If you've heard my whole story, or if you've watched the videos, it was Panasonic and video that led me to Olympus, but I'm working just fine with the Olympus gear for video. So obviously it's just like any other camera. It's all a matter of what your needs and what your preferences are. You're watching me right now live streaming on an Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II, their flagship camera. Full, HDMI out capabilities, running it through a real simple Elgato Cam Link into actually a Windows gaming laptop that is, pretty souped up. It's 6-core i7 processor, yada, yada, yada. All my tutorials that I've done for the last several months, and all the stuff that you're going to see coming out in the future, all shot with Olympus, both the primary stand-up shots with me and the green screen, as well as all the B-roll, all shot both with the EM1 Mark II and also also the Pen F I use for some of my B-roll as well. It comes in, really quite handy. And recently, I started using the EPL9 and also the little Tough camera for some B-roll. And you're doing a great job of it, okay? Chaz Maz, for video, get a video camera, not a still camera. Well, it's interesting that you say that, Chaz, because I would actually disagree with you in the sense that there is no such thing anymore. Now, don't get me wrong. I know we can talk about the Canon C100s and all that kind of stuff. Those are video specific cameras, yes. But, the reality of it is you're seeing people using DSLRs and even like mirrorless cameras, Sony's and Panasonic's doing television show work, doing some B-roll on major motion pictures. That's changing, right? It's changing a lot. The bottom line is there's a lot of different ways to solve problems. I can't tell you how many times I turn on a television now and, there will be like an action scene and here comes a shot that's clearly, it's done with a drone, or a shot that's clearly done with a GoPro. And from a quality standpoint, it's only because I'm a photographer that I notice a difference. And mainly I notice a difference not because of quality, but because of the perspective that the camera provides. The cameras today are designed, to work both ways. And I would argue, and I've talked about this before, that we're going to reach a point not too far down the road where still cameras are essentially going to go away. Now, don't panic. But what I mean is the cameras will primarily be video cameras first. Because keep in mind, we're up to 4K, we're up to 8K. We're getting to the point that the video resolution is almost matching the still resolution. The minute that happens, you're just going to shoot video clips. And you're going to pull the still frames from it. And that's totally cool. Like, I'm not complaining about that. That's like neat use of, neat use of technology that's coming. But yeah, definitely, I mean, I like the fact that we can do both with these cameras. So, you know, like I said, Chaz, I'm using an EM1 Mark II right now for live streaming. It works great, super easy setup. You're looking at the image, you can judge for yourself, but there you go. So Frederick, your Canon T41 has good video. Yeah, I mean, a lot of cameras have good video. So, and for me, Lofty and Scalar, you know, I think I'm kind of in the same boat you are, but we're flipped, right? I have mad respect for the Panasonic cameras. They were great. I personally, right, I just don't like the ergonomics. You know, people ask me all the time, it's like, well, you never talk about the Fuji. Like, didn't you consider Fuji when you switched? Yeah, I considered everything. I considered the fact that I was unhappy with what Nikon was giving me, and I wanted to make a change. I had a need. That need was I wanted lighter cameras. I wanted smaller cameras. For me, while I was very happy with what I was getting out of Panasonic, I just don't like the ergonomics of the Panasonic cameras, and I hate the ergonomics of the Fuji cameras. That doesn't make them bad. I'm not trash talking those cameras. It just means for me, they were not a viable choice. So, you know, again, it's one of those things you have to, you know, you've got to find the camera that can kind of check off all the boxes for you. That's what makes it the right camera. Does it do what you need it to do? Are you comfortable using it, etc.? Okay. Marku, no more still cameras, raw. Yeah, they'll still be raw, but you'll shoot raw video, just like, you know, you're doing now, okay? I will, in fact, maybe what I'll do is we'll make that the topic for next week's TogChat. Just to spur some discussion, I will talk about the idea that it's my prediction that still cameras are essentially going to go away. And it's going to get a lot of people freaked out. It's really not that extreme once you take the time to step back and understand all the technology that is available to us right now. And if we started bundling a lot of that technology together, there's no reason for a still camera. That's the thing. So I will. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about that next week, and we'll see if we can build that in. And if I have another lesson that I want to teach, I'll go ahead and I'll throw that in there just to cause some people some heartburn. Okay. So Duke, anyway, Dreams Time. That's where I would start. You know, the problem with the cheaper sites, by the way, sometimes, you know, you kind of get what you pay for. So keep that in mind. All right. So here we go. Daryl Levia. As a new photographer who was crazy enough to spend his savings on a Sony a7R III and the cheapest decent portrait lens that Sony has to offer, the 85 1.8. His main focus is portrait, and that's why he picked the 85, but he plans to buy other lenses as the money comes. Of course, now he's got to save a lot longer, just saying, but you know. His question is it possible to shoot the sky at night to see the stars with great detail with a focal length like this? I know this is not ideal, but if you had to, how would you do it? In terms of settings, and also important, is Lightroom enough to do all the editing, or do I need to get into Photoshop or Aurora HDR or any other? Thank you. Night sky is beautiful here in Florida. Not tonight, it's not. So hopefully you're not where the craziness is happening, right? So Daryl, you definitely need to do a little bit more research on things. So the short answer to your question is, sure, you can shoot the night sky with an 85 millimeter. Your lens has nothing to do with can you shoot the night sky. Your lens has to do with what perspective is it going to give you, period. Right? That's it. Done. Okay? There are, however, a lot of other things that you need to consider. So what you want to do is you want to do some searching on the terms astrophotography, because I am not going to pretend to be an expert on astrophotography. However, I know some experts on astrophotography. So what I would actually encourage you to do is pay a visit to the Get Olympus website. So I just went back to Get Olympus. In fact, here, let's go out to the homepage, okay? Now, I'm not trying to sell you a camera, so everybody take a big chill if you think, oh God, here we go talking about Olympus again, right? No. On the Olympus website, which is getolympus.com, in fact, here, let me go ahead and put that in the chat window for you guys, all right? This is the US version of the site. So on the website, click on the tab that says Learn. Click on the tab that says, where am I at here? Sorry, Learning Center, the very first one with the light bulb, right? Once you get there, you got all kind of categories, all right? There's photography tips, technology innovation, events and workshops, all kind of cool stuff, right? If you go to photography tips, or actually here, let's just do astrophotography. We'll type that in and we'll hit search. And what's going to come up is a bunch of stuff here. Photographing Norway, the live composite stuff. Here we go. Cosmic Living Room, which is shot by Peter, is just absolutely amazing. One of the other Olympus Visionaries. These are tutorials that are not Olympus specific. Yes, they mention the Olympus gear because they were shot with Olympus cameras, but you'll be able to take the techniques and the things that you learn in these, and you'll be able to go and apply them. So, I think realistically, what you're going to find is that, yes, you can shoot astrophotography with that 85 millimeter. What is going to be a little bit limiting is, I find when I'm looking at astrophotography shots by most of my fellow visionaries and a lot of other photographers, they tend to use wide-angle lenses, in part because they want something in the foreground to give a sense of scale. So the longer your lens is, right, you're basically essentially zooming in, which means it's getting harder to have a foreground object to create that sense of scale. So that's potentially going to be your biggest challenge in my mind, using that 85 millimeter. But, if you are going to build out on that Olympus system that you have, and I realize given the cost of the lenses, it's going to take you a little bit longer. That's unfortunate. But, at some point you're going to wind up wanting to get a wide angle lens, and that is probably going to be your best solution for, doing astrophotography. But at this point, start reading some tutorials specifically on that subject, and then you're going to find a much better kind of guideline of, hey, this is what I need, this is what I should be considering, and then obviously you've got to kind of work in how does that fit in with your other photography needs when you start adding more lenses to your kit, right? Okay, so let's see here. Let me whoops, for some reason I am not able to read that one. Why can't I read that one? Here we go. So Roderick, he's going to break down and buy a mannequin and a wig to both practice and use to set up for lighting before shot. He'll probably end up with a selection of several wigs. Wow, okay. What would you recommend as a first wig? Short or long, straight, wavy, curly, and what color? Okay, I'm sorry. Roderick, I think you're overthinking the wig part. So I do have a couple of wigs. So since I'm making fun of that, let me just full disclosure. I have a few wigs for my mannequin. Just remember, at the end of the day, you're not creating portfolio images with your mannequin, right? At least I hope not. So what I would advise, in fact, here, let me grab one of my wigs. This is one of the wigs that you see most frequently on Lola. Okay, so it's a short hair wig. I went purposely with a lighter color just because it's kind of easier to make exposure mistakes with the lighter color hair, essentially by blowing it out, right? So that's why I went with a lighter color. I went with a shorter wig really just so that I didn't have as much messy hair, because even though when I shoot the mannequin, I'm not shooting it for my portfolio, I am shooting it for YouTube, right? So I didn't want lots and lots of messy hair. Here's the important piece though. You guys know that I'm all fine with shopping for Amazon and I'm on Amazon for stuff and that. Don't buy the wig on Amazon. Most of the time on Amazon, you're going to get cheap nylon wigs that the minute they come out of the bag, the hair is just everywhere and you can't control it. You can't do anything with it. I went to a wig store here in Allentown. So, you may have to go to kind of the next big city near you, but Google wig stores there and go into a wig store. This wig only cost me like $24. Which, it's not like buying a $6 costume wig, but the nice part of it is you can see I can take this thing, I can shake it all up, and then in seconds, the hair all lays back down flat, right? So because it's not human hair, but it's hair that can actually be styled. If this was a long-haired wig and I had a makeup artist here and we wanted to shape it or style it, we would be able to do that. They can use the curling irons on it, the whole bit. So spend a couple of extra bucks, get a wig that at least is not going to drive you crazy because it's all frizzed, which is exactly what happens with the costume wigs. But I don't know that you need like a whole bunch of different ones and different colors. I would say go with the lighter wig because it's easier to make a lighting mistake, an exposure mistake with your lighting on the lighter wig. And just keep the hair short, just to make your life, simple. No, John Edward, sorry, I am not going to put the wig on. I am not here for your entertainment. So, Caleb, how do you maintain creative momentum in your photography? More than just practicing with a camera, what else is part of your routine that helps you develop new ideas or build upon recent work? I like to say when people ask me that question in person, my first response is to say drugs, man, just drugs. No, honestly, it's a matter of making it a priority. One of the things that I started doing when I was probably in my 20s was really kind of teaching myself and training myself to just be aware, to look for pictures, to try and look at things through a creative lens. I'm the guy that you don't want to go to the movies with. My wife will vouch for that. I'm the guy that when I go to a movie, I'm studying the lighting. I notice how a scene was shot and how they maneuvered the cameras. I notice the symmetry in a shot. I notice bloopers. I watch a TV show, I watch a movie, I spot every blooper and continuity error in the movie. It drives my wife nuts, okay? But it literally was a matter of over time, just really teaching myself to look at pictures. It started, and I would do it simply when I was bored. That's how it started. If I was bored, I would sit there, because I didn't have a camera with me. That's part of why I was bored. So I would just sit there and I would look at things and be like, how could I photograph that? How would I like that? Etc. Okay? So yeah, but it's honestly, it's about building a habit. So Noel Whitman, do you ever get a job or see a situation where you use a full frame again? No, I don't. And Noel, listen, I appreciate the question, but this is one of those questions, so I don't mean to take it out on you. I wish people could get their heads wrapped around this stuff, okay? This debate about full frame is just so stupid. And I know you don't mean any insult, Noel, but look at my photography. When you ask a question like that, you're basically saying, hey, Joe, you're a nice guy, but your photography pretty much sucks. When are you going to go use full frame and take real pictures? Really? Come on. So, and I know you don't mean it that way, but seriously, no, there's no job where I'm going to need a full frame camera, period. It's not going to happen, okay? If there were a client that came to me and said, hey, we'll give you this job, but we want a full frame raw file, at that point, I would make the consideration of, is this job worth the money I'm going to get paid? And if it is, the client is then going to pay for the rental for that camera. Am I going to buy it? Hell no. Client's going to pay to rent the camera and whatever lenses are needed and everything else, and then it's a pass-through, okay? I've talked a lot in the past about situations where, actually, when digital came into play, I switched very early. 2000 is when I got the Nikon D1. So it was 2006 or 2007. I got a phone call from a trade publication that was out in Chicago. They wanted to hire me to do a cover shot for a trade publication of two executives from Rite Aid, the drugstore chain, and I had to photograph them standing in front of a Rite Aid drugstore in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So we got through, we spec'd out the whole job. We went through day rates, everything else. Everything was great. The woman's like, great, I really want to work with you. Oh, one last thing I forgot to tell you. I need it shot on medium format film. And so here's me on the other end of the phone at this point, like, what the heck? I'm shooting, whatever Nikon was out at that point. That's the work that she saw on my website, on my portfolio. And then she tells me it's got to be a medium format film. So certainly I didn't have a medium format film camera and I wasn't about to go buy one. And even worse yet, I hadn't shot color transparency film in 6 or 7 years at that point. So I really wasn't comfortable with the idea of shooting color transparencies because, color transparencies, you got to get the exposure dead on. And digital does give you a little bit more leeway that essentially allows you to be a little sloppier. So basically what I did is I put the quote together. It was a good gig and they were paying top dollar. So I put the quote together and included the fee to rent a camera and rent an assistant. And then what I did, a good friend of mine who was still shooting film, still shooting medium format, I rented him and his camera for the day. And literally his job, he helped me carry 2 bags to and from the car. And once I got all my lighting set up, and I tested it with my digital camera, my Nikon. He stepped in with a light meter, took the meter readings, loaded the film in his medium format Mamiya, and then handed me the camera. I pressed the button for 8 frames, handed the camera back to him. He pulled the film out, handed me the finished film, and then I took it to the lab to get it processed. Okay, so you know, that's the kind of thing that, indeed, if that happens, it's going to be a pass through in that sense. But I certainly won't. There's no reason that I would need to change at all. My work has not dropped off or slacked off or lost its edge because I've gone to a smaller sensor. It's just not. It's a matter of understanding, what do you really need out of your sensor, which goes back to, you know, when do you really need to buy that new camera? What do you really need your gear to do? That's kind of how you're doing it. So, you know, it's. I understand your question is a sincere question, though, so don't get me wrong. I'm definitely not upset at you. It's one of those questions that drives me crazy when I hear it, because so many people are so focused on, you know, and even Olympus shooters are. I will find people that are kind of new to Olympus, and they're still kind of looking over their shoulder, like, you know, did I make the right choice? Because there's all these new full frame cameras coming out. Am I missing something? You're not missing anything. If you're taking great pictures, how could you be missing something, right? That's the key. So I've told you guys before, I still, even when I went to Florida 2 weeks ago, I still had people like, did you really sell all your Nikon gear? Like I have it in a closet somewhere, just in case. Like, no, you can check out eBay. It's proof. It was sold. It's all gone. So anyway, next up. David's got a question here. If he switches camera brands from Canon, can he use his Canon compatible flashes in manual mode with the new non-Canon camera? Well, so David, in theory, yes, but there's a couple things that are important here. Number one, it depends on which non-Canon camera you go with. Certainly, as you've already figured out, they're not going to work in TTL in that. But the other piece is, don't assume that they'll work properly. They will probably fire, because basically all you need is the center pin to fire. You don't need all the little pins. You need the center pin to actually trigger the flash. However, the concern is, depending on which camera brand you go with and how their other pins are set up, you don't want to have a situation where you drag those other pins across the pins on the camera and create some type of a short in the circuit, because the wiring is not the same and the circuitry is not the same. So in theory, yes, it'll work, but do a little bit of research before you actually make that decision, okay? And that's actually what you're dealing with right now, is exactly the kind of reason why it's a good idea, in my opinion, to not build out your lighting system with camera brand lights. That's why, like, for instance, I use Godot. And I recently got my hands on 2 of the Olympus, the FL900 flashes, which are actually really nice. I carry one of these. So what might be redundant, did you box? What you kind of have to be in terms of not leave them exposed to a lot of, you know, sunlight. And here that people are still seeing people are having issues here. Good feed going. Let's see what we can do here, if we can get this kicked up again. All right, so that's flying. So let me just put a message in here for you guys. So let me just, good, so I'm coming back. So guys, actually I never left here. I was just gonna put a message in for you guys. I'm showing a good feed. I don't know exactly what's going on, or if it's just happened in some parts of the world. But yeah, everything's going out solid here. So hopefully YouTube's going to catch up, but we haven't, I literally haven't dropped any frames this entire broadcast tonight. So, all right, Doyle had a question. Can I talk about what trade organizations are actually beneficial for working photographers and how are they advantageous? Also, part 2 of that question is certified professional photographer. They're available through groups like PPA and MYIP. Are they worth the time and expense? So, Doyle, depending on what genre of photography you want to work in professionally, I would say that the trade organizations are extremely beneficial. So, for instance, if you're going to be a portrait or a wedding photographer, PPA, definitely the organization to be a part of. If you are going to get involved in media type work, commercial advertising, those types of things, ASMP, the American Society of Media Photographers, they are an organization that is just absolutely outstanding to be involved with. In both cases, both of those organizations that I mentioned, the real benefit, in my opinion, now this is not a popular belief, but I'm going to give you my answer. The real benefit, in my opinion, is the resources that they provide you in terms of education and also discounts and also legal support, etc. As far as the idea of becoming a certified professional photographer, I can guarantee you this: your clients don't give a damn. There are plenty of PPA master photographers and certified professional photographers whose work is boring as hell. That does not make you a great photographer. So there is a value, though, to going through that program. If you're just starting out and you're kind of trying to run before you walk, but you're willing to put in the hard work, are you going to learn a lot by going through that program and becoming a certified photographer or becoming a master photographer? Absolutely, you will, yes. However, I am a firm believer that becoming a master photographer through the PPA program, and remember gang, I make money speaking at PPA events. They don't like when I say this. I'm being honest with you. I really feel that the master photographer program is a creativity killer, period. Everything about it is a creativity killer. So I would much rather see you put in the hard work and find other resources for learning your photography or other classes that are not as structured with as many rules to them. So I don't feel that aspect of those organizations is worthwhile. But the resources, the discounts, the benefits, PPA alone, you get $15,000 worth of gear insurance included in your membership fee every year. That essentially pays for the membership, right? So, and you can expand that if you need more. So yeah, I mean, for that alone, PPA is a great organization. So I would encourage you to look at both of those, or at least depending on what type of photography you're looking to do, PPA for portraits and weddings, ASMP for commercial advertising work, that type of stuff, okay? All right, Ted had a question. He posted this in my Facebook group. Not sure if I covered this, but he's rather new to the show. Would I talk about maximizing a small studio space? Ta-da, there is, okay. Tips and tricks to make a small studio work for you. So I did post this link in my TogChat group, but let me go ahead and get it here in the TogChat show. Ted, if you go to my website and you click the search button and you type in home studio, up is going to come a video. Hopefully right at the top there it is, DIY home studio, which is basically going to tell you all about how I did, there it is. Let me go back and I'm going to put that in the chat window for you guys. It's going to tell you all about how I set up my studio. Guys, I'm seeing all of your posts about it being out of sync or that kind of stuff. Bottom line is, I'm sorry guys, nothing I can do about it. I've got a great feed going out. Everything is green lighted, no drop frames. I'm using less than 13% of my system CPUs at this point. So for you techies, you know what that means. For those of you that aren't, I'm sorry, but it's a YouTube thing tonight. This is technology that I have no control over on that side. So no, I just recently spent a boat ton of money to upgrade all this stuff, and it is working exactly like it's supposed to be. So I wish I had a better solution for you, but we're just going to have to kind of muddle through it. And if there's anything that's really important that you missed, check it on the replay later. Okay. All right. So let's let's get back here. I got a couple more questions left on my list, and then I want to go back through the feed because I know we got some questions in the feed also. Matthew had a question here. Can you talk about your personal experience photographing interests outside of whatever your norm is? So in that case, it would be for me, anything that's not like portrait work, right? For example, like doing portraits, but he took his camera to China. He likes doing portraits, sorry, but he took his camera to China to take a bunch of snapshots. He thinks out of all the photos that he took, maybe one landscape photo looks really good. Now, he's not a landscape photographer, but it was a learning experience for him. He took it really quick without any prior planning, right place, right time. With all that said, he doesn't think that he enjoys carrying a camera and lens around when he travels. So there are a couple pieces to unpack there, Matthew. Let's start at the end of your question. So the first thing is about, carrying a camera and a lens when you travel. I'll be honest with you, when I go on vacation with my wife, I hate taking a camera, any kind of camera, period, because it's vacation, right? And I love the fact that I can use my phone if I see something that's really worth having a picture of. Now, I will say that with the Olympus Tough TG5, it fits in my back pocket. So that will become my vacation camera in the future. But I don't think there's anything wrong at all. And it's all about what are your priorities as a photographer? What is your real joy and your interest? If you just want to be able to live in the moment and actually experience things in the moment and not have that camera be dragging along, that's fine. If you don't want to be dragging the weight of a Nikon or Canon, but you still like to be able to take pictures, well, then you look at a system like Olympus, and that's going to help you do that. But more importantly, what about photographing things outside your typical area of interest? I think that that is very important to do. And I'll tell you honestly, it's something that I don't get to do enough of. So I will show you guys some of the photographs next week. But I told you, I've mentioned it last week, about how I recently photographed a football game. Now, I haven't shot sports consistently in probably about 25 years. I used to shoot a lot of sports. I used to cover the NFL and the Philadelphia Eagles. I used to shoot lots of college and high school sports. I haven't done any of that in decades. So I have the 300mm f4 lens from Olympus, and I've been wanting to use it for a while and wanting to get out and play with it. So a couple weeks back, it was homecoming at my wife's college, so I decided I was going to go and I was going to shoot the game. So I decided I'd spend the whole afternoon there, shoot the whole game, and it's a Division III school, so it's easy, walk in the stadium, walk on the field, no big deal. I didn't need credentials, nothing, okay? So I took the 300mm out, got onto the sidelines. Now remember, folks, micro four thirds. So that 300mm is like shooting with a 600mm lens on a full frame camera. So there's two options. The sloppy and the lazy option is back up from the sideline so that you have a little bit more space in the frame to play around, or hang in there, be tough, and realize that the slightest wrong movement, your subject's out of frame and you have no idea where they're at. You're not going to find them again. So God's honest truth. First quarter of the game, I sucked. It was horrible. I was taking pictures of the grass. I was taking pictures of people's feet. I was taking pictures, I was all over the place because I was not prepared for just how much of an impact that magnification was going to have. It had nothing to do with the gear. It had to do with me. I was out of practice. By the second quarter, I was starting to zone in on things. Then I also realized there were two settings that I was able to change that were actually going to help me a little bit. Made those two changes. That allowed me to zone in a little bit more. Took a break at halftime, came back after halftime. Third quarter, started to get my feet under me. Started to, get some decent shots. I was catching moments that I wanted. I was tracking things much better with lens. Fourth quarter, I was nailing it. Play after play after play. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it was like, award-winning picture after award-winning picture. No. But I was getting the shots for the plays. So obviously, they may not be all amazing plays and that, but I am going to share some of the pictures and some of the bad ones, okay? Just to let you guys know that, it happens. But what was great about it, the best part of that whole experience of being out there on a football field with this gear and being way out of practice, the best part of that experience was the fact that I sucked. And I had to work 10 times harder to get my head in the game and really focus and pay attention to what I was doing. And fortunately, it was a skill that I had from many years ago, but I had to really bring that skill back and I had to work on it, remember all the pieces, okay? So the whole idea of kind of getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of what you normally do, and going back and just trying things that are different, that take you that take a completely different skill set. I think that it is both very important. I think that it is very valuable, and I strongly encourage it. So I kind of think there's two different things there, Matthew. The vacation thing, it's just a matter of your preference. If you don't want to carry a camera on vacation, don't carry a camera on vacation. But as far as shooting stuff that's outside your norm, I think that's very, very important. Here's the thing that I will leave you with this thought on that question. A good photographer can take a good picture in any genre, period. And that is because that good photographer has done the legwork and understands photography and understands the concept of problem solving. So I'm not saying that they're going to take an award-winning picture. I'm not saying that they're going to take an epic picture when they step out of their norm. But they should be able to deliver a good picture. I'm a firm believer in that. So that obviously requires practice. It requires really having a good solid foundation. It requires trying different things. It requires challenging yourself, testing things out. But it's doable? Yes, it's very doable. Okay? All right, so where are we at here? Ooh, okay, I got 11 minutes. I got a couple more questions in the feed. So if you got any last minute questions, guys, throw them in. It looks like I might have a few minutes here. So Larry Davis, he has a Nikon D5200. The highest flash sync that he can use is 200. Can he shoot high-speed sync with his camera? Larry, I'm sorry, number one, I don't know. Number two, if you don't know the answer to that, I'm not trying to be a jerk, man. I'm just being straight up with you. If you don't know the answer, you shouldn't be shooting high-speed sync in the first place because you don't know why you're shooting high-speed sync, right? But the way you find that answer is your instruction manual, okay? I've never owned a D5200, so I don't know if it shoots high-speed sync or not, but go back to the instruction manual. If it shoots high-speed sync, there will be a section in the index called high-speed sync, and that's going to be your answer. That's the way to put it. So, okay. Let's see. Hero Shots. What's a good high-speed sync transmitter trigger combo for Olympus? The one that goes with the flash brand that you buy. Like, you don't buy them independently. You buy the trigger that's going to work with your flash and then your camera. So that's what you're going to work with. Okay. Albie, how can you tell if a flash trigger will be compatible with a flash or a monolight system? Is it just frequency? No, it's not. And sorry, not to give you guys the cheesy answers, but Google it. Like, just look up the device, and you're going to find all the specs. Look at the specs. You can even go to Amazon, look at the specs, and see what it's compatible with. Okay, but honestly, that's the easiest and the best way to do it. I will go back, Al, to what I was talking about before with the person who asked me about the Canon. David asked me the question about using the Canon flashes on other cameras. The biggest thing that you have to worry about, Al, if you're going to take one brand to another brand, it's not the center pin, because everybody has a center pin, right? So the center pin's going to fire. It's what are those other pins going to do? Are they going to cross circuitry? That's where you need to be careful. Okay. So, but all you got to do is just Google it and find out. Sorry. The thing you guys got to, understand about me, I'm not kidding you when I say I don't care about gear. We have this thing called Google. It's amazing. You should all check it out. If it's information that I need to store to be a photographer, to do my work, to take pictures, then it's stored. If it's information that I can look up in 2 seconds in a phone, then I don't store it. I don't know. And I mean, no disrespect to any camera company, but I couldn't tell you what works on Canon or Sony. That's not my job, and that's not what I'm trying to teach you. So the biggest thing I will teach you is watch the little pins, okay? Any trigger will work on almost any camera based on the center pin, but it's not going to give you all the features. Somebody mentioned before about, the idea of waking the strobe up, the TTL features, the high-speed sync features. That's where you need to have the pins match. But if the pins don't match, the concern is, are you going to short out the camera? So, Frederick Maxwell, an old flash is good to use with triggers like a Vivitar 85. Yeah, but also understand that like the Vivitar 283s, and I believe the 285, prior to a certain year, and I don't remember what year it is, so you got to Google it, do not put those flashes in the hot shoe of your camera. If you put those flashes on the hot shoe of a modern camera, you will fry the camera the first time you press the button. they have way too much juice that goes through the pins. So like, I've talked before about how I give Vivitar 283s that I buy on eBay to my interns. And the first thing I tell them is never put this on your hot shoe. You put it on your hot shoe, don't come talk to me when your camera doesn't work. So they all get forewarned up front. Can't do it, okay? All right, let's see here. What else do we have? Jean Edward, who does the voice of my intro? You can ask me that on Zoom, Jean Edward, and I will give you his link. I found him on Fiverr.com. He, if I'm not mistaken, is Canadian. So yeah, you could have him do your greeting. That'd be very easy to do. Okay. Let's see here. So scrolling back up. Now I got to get past everybody telling me that the audio doesn't work to find the questions. Let's see here. Let's see. Scrolling back again, guys. If you have any questions left, we got a few minutes. Frederick Maxwell, what do you think about the Canon 7D Mark II? It's really good. I have it and I shoot with it. Well, I think it sucks, man. But if you like it, cool. Like, it's not a bad camera. There are no bad cameras today, right? I mean, there's just not. There is no such thing as a bad camera that's on the market today. So for me, Canons are obnoxious. They're heavy, they're bulky. It's just ridiculous. But that's me, right? So I'm not trashing Canon, gang. I'm just saying. So yeah, if you like it and it's doing what you need, sweet. That's what you want. That's what's important. But yeah, I am not a fan of Canons. I think they are just outrageously bulky and heavy. Totally not my thing. So, okay. Let's see, John, with the new Google Pixel. Oh, we're talking about the video thing. Yeah, I'll talk about that next week, guys. I'll explain to you what my prediction is in terms of where this technology is going to go and how we're going to use it. And I'll give you the reasons and the facts behind my prediction, because it's just a prediction. But I think it's also a prediction it's worth thinking about. Because even if it doesn't happen in its entirety the way that I describe it, you're going to see there's going to be a fair number of changes in that direction with the cameras that are going to be coming out. I mean, guaranteed. It's pretty much writing is on the wall that we're going to see some of these changes happen. So Adam had a question way back. Do I ever travel back in time and re-edit? No, I just don't. My quote that I do all the time, your best shot is your next shot. That happened during a live TogChat. That quote occurred for the first time during one of the early TogChat shows when, somebody asked me, like, what's your favorite picture? And I said, my next one. And that's the truth. For me, like, once I'm done with the picture, I'm done with the picture. I'm bored with it. It's like, move on, go to the next one. So, going back, yeah. I mean, are there shots maybe where I have better Photoshop skills now? I might be able to improve it. Yeah, but it's kind of like been there, done that. So I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm more interested in shooting new stuff and creating new stuff. Not, believe me, guys, with everything I do between teaching and doing YouTube and shooting tutorials, the one thing I have a hard time finding time to do is take pictures, which kind of sucks. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love what I'm doing and I'm thrilled to be able to do it. But the thing that I have to fight to make time for is to take pictures. So for me, I don't want to be wasting that time going back and looking at stuff that I did before. I want to be moving forward and finding new things to shoot and new experiences to have. So Mark Faust, small rig now has a left-handed grip and trigger. Yeah, I mean, that'll work. It's still a bit awkward in terms of your controls or that. But yeah, if you're a left-handed person who simply can't function the other way around, then certainly that definitely would help. Adam, do I keep all my raw files or do I weed them out and delete? And do you ever travel back? So I don't travel back. We just answered that. Do I ever weed out and delete? Absolutely. I do not keep all my raw files. So basically let's say I shoot 1,000 pictures in a full day. Okay. In fact, actually, I told you guys I was in Dumbo, Brooklyn last Friday for Olympus. I shot about 2,600 frames on the day, all JPEGs, right? I told you, I decided to live on the edge and shoot JPEGs just to show you that it can be done, right? So 2,600 frames. I narrowed that down initially to about 1,000 frames. The 1,600 frames that didn't make that cut, delete, gone, done, see ya. Don't care about them, don't need them, don't want them. That 1,000 frames then got wheedled down. Olympus and the two girls both received about 110 images out of all of it, I still have the 1,000 frames. They stay basically as my version of the take for the day. But those 1600s that didn't make that cut, they're gone. And that would be the same with my raw files, as well. So Daniel Crotty, how are the Godox 8200s working out for you? They're working out great. I'm very happy with them. It's a great move. Like I've said before, I'm nothing against Interfit. I love those Honey Badgers. The new ones with the lithium batteries, really pretty cool. But because I'm doing a lot of stuff on the road and traveling with gear and teaching on the road, I wanted to be able to work with one lighting system, so I'm using the same gear everywhere. That way my brain doesn't have to be switching back and forth between different strobe systems. So yeah, the Godox 8200s have been working great. I'm really happy with them. The only thing I miss, so I'll tell you honestly, one thing I miss, which doesn't apply to 99% of you, I miss the modeling lights on the Honey Badgers because they were really nice when I was shooting video for you guys in the studio. That's the only thing I miss. But in terms of actually taking pictures, no, not at all. I don't miss them in the slightest. So let's see. Lieutenant 1025, how will you compare a 20 megapixel Micro Four Third OMD camera with a 45 megapixel Nikon D850? What's to compare? Like, what are you going to do with that Nikon D850 that you're going to see the difference in those 45 megapixels, man? You're not going to see it, okay? I don't know who you are, but I'll kick your ass with your images with my Nikon or with my 20 megapixel Olympus compared to your Nikon 45. It's like ridiculous. Why do you have to compare? Like, what is the comparison? Okay? On a bench test, yes, the Nikon is higher resolution. Yes, the Nikon has more dynamic range. Yeah. It's got a bunch of those mores. But what does that actually do for you as a photographer? How is that making your work better? Because if you don't know how to put that to use, it's wasted. And it's money wasted. And the fact of the matter is, our eyes are not capable of processing that much data. Learn how your brain works. Learn how your eyes transmit information to your brain and what your brain sees and doesn't see and how it captures it. We are creating cameras with technology that is beyond what our brains can appreciate. So yeah, if we're going to argue numbers, of course, bigger's better. Duh. But that doesn't make better photography. It just doesn't, okay? So, once again, as every time you guys ask me that question, you're going to get the same snotty response, right? Because when you ask me that question, you're insulting my photography. So when you ask me that question, do me a favor and say, you know what, Edelman, your photography sucks. So how about that comparison? Make sure you put that in there because that's what you're saying, right? The bottom line is you don't have to have full frame to take good pictures. You don't have to have 45 megapixels to take good pictures. Are there reasons to have that? Maybe. But that's going to be on a photographer by photographer basis. The overwhelming majority of people that waste their time watching YouTube videos instead of taking pictures don't need those 45 megapixels. They simply don't. Yet they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars unnecessarily. And every single one of them wishes they could get this piece of gear or that piece of gear, which if they hadn't spent that much money on their camera body, they could buy. And their photography would not be suffering at all. So, Roderick, editing is done about a third of the time with Olympus, and that's actually very, very true. I've definitely saved myself a lot of time with regards to my retouching by making the switch to Micro Four Thirds. A lot, okay? Sam Hunter, you're struggling with white balance. Any suggestions? You got to give me a little bit more information there, Sam. And unfortunately, like I'm over time tonight. So do me a favor, save that question for next week or post it in the Facebook group, okay? And I will definitely get to that. Last question, Ken Schallenberg. Using the eye autofocus on OMD, always struggle with that, most likely operator error. Yeah, I would say it's probably operator error only because at least for me, Ken, it works great. It's like one of my favorite features about the OMD. Ken, I know that you're a member of my Facebook group. By all means, feel free to post a little bit more detailed scenario in there, and I'll definitely be glad to give you some feedback as far as what I think might be off. I don't want to say it's finicky, but it's definitely a combination of features that you kind of want to get them set up the right way, and the right way depends on specifically like, you know, what are you shooting, right? What are you trying to accomplish with it? So yeah, by all means, like post a little bit more information in there, okay? All right, gang. So listen, we're over 90 minutes. Remember the deal, right? If you were here for 90 minutes, or if you're watching this for 90 minutes, you owe me 180 minutes of taking pictures. How many other YouTube photographers are telling you while you're watching your videos, you shouldn't be watching your videos. You should be taking pictures. I love that you guys spend time with me. I love talking to you. I love our chats, even when you get me stressed out. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not accomplishing anything unless I'm getting you to pick that camera up and go and shoot and think about what you're doing. So, as always, gang, seriously, I really appreciate you spending the time tonight. Videos coming next week. We'll be back in the swing of things. Even more new pieces to TogChat next week, so look forward to that. And as always, please remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now, pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot is your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.